Pakistan's fiscal position improved in the last financial year, with the overall budget deficit falling to its lowest level in more than 2 decades. The fiscal deficit narrowed to 2.6% of the GDP in financial year 26, helped by record cash surplus from the provinces and a sharp decline in interest payments. The primary surplus has also reached a record 2.9% of GDP. However, the cost of running the civil government crossed the 1 trillion rupee mark for the first time, despite restructuring and austerity measures. Civil government expenditure rose to about 1.03 trillion rupees, up from 892 billion rupees a year earlier. Defense spending has also increased, reaching around 2.59 trillion rupees compared with 2.19 trillion rupees in the previous year. One of the biggest sources of the government revenue was the Petroleum Levy. The government collected a record 1.57 trillion rupees through the levy, exceeding its original target of 1.47 trillion rupees. The strong Petroleum Levy collection came as fuel prices reached record levels following the US-Israel attacks on Iran. The government is targeting even higher collections from petroleum products in the current fiscal year. Meanwhile, interest payments fell sharply to around 6.95 trillion rupees from 8.89 trillion rupees a year earlier. The reduction followed the easing of interest rates, which helped bring down the government's debt servicing costs. Total government expenditure consequently fell to around 23.1 trillion rupees, 24.2 trillion rupees in financial year 25. Subsidies also declined to about 1 trillion rupees, while development spending fell to around 727 billion rupees. Another major factor behind the improved fiscal position was the record surplus generated by Pakistan's provinces. The 4 provinces collectively transferred a cash surplus of around 1.45 trillion rupees to the center, compared with around 929 billion rupees the previous year. Punjab contributed the largest share, providing around 915 billion rupees. Sindh contributed around 350 billion rupees, while Khyber Pakhtunkhwa provided roughly 165 billion rupees and Balochistan around 21 billion rupees. Despite the improvement in the fiscal deficit, the government revenue collection remained below expectations. The Federal Board of Revenue Collections stood at around 13 trillion rupees, roughly 10% below the target, although higher than previous year's collection. The Finance Ministry also reported a record statistical discrepancy of around 853 billion rupees in the fiscal accounts. The discrepancy was more than double the previous year's figures and had previously raised concern from the International Monetary Fund. The ministry attributed the gap in reporting delays and accounting adjustments at the federal level, as well as changes in the provincial bank deposits. So while Pakistan ended the fiscal year 26 with a significantly smaller fiscal deficit and a record primary surplus, the figures also highlight the government's continued reliance on petroleum revenues, provincial surpluses, and low debt servicing costs to improve its fiscal position. The figures also highlight the government's continued reliance on petroleum revenues, provincial surpluses, and lower debt servicing costs to improve its fiscal position. For more, read the full Dawn story linked in the description.